believe we are recording. Welcome. Welcome to study 3. Lovely that we could all be together. Why don't I pray? Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together. We thank you for your word, and we pray that you be with us as we delve deeper into the book of John. Pray that you would give us insight and understanding, and that we might encourage one another to live and serve and follow you. Amen. All right. I do have some handouts that I have prepared.
Not the Bible. Bring me on.
Yes, unless you've read John chapters 5 and 6 very recently, yes, you might need a Bible.
It's reading Matthew this morning. And Isaiah.
Matthew and Isaiah, yes, Isaiah 20 and Matthew 18, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes. But yes, no, we're at John 5 and 6, so if you need a Bible, that would be
I'll go get it.
helpful.
Could have got them while I was over there.
Sorry?
So could have got a bunch of them while I was over there.
Yeah.
I thought everyone else was better prepared.
Right. Well, without actually going to 5 and 6, I just wanted to start with a more general question, because it's actually going to keep it at the front of our minds as we go through these chapters. The question is, what is this this is what I said last week, so I'm just recapping one of the big things I said last week. What is this movement we see in the narrative throughout the gospel according to John? There is a movement we see from
Light to dark.
Dark to light.
Dark to light. That sounds very good. Like the dark to light, yeah.
old to new, dark to light, yes.
Earthly understanding to
Earthly understanding to a heavenly understanding.
Inside and outside.
Outside to inside.
Oh, both. It goes
Okay, yep. There we have.
back and forth.
Yeah, especially for those who think they're inside, who Jesus is saying you're actually outside. Yes.
It's like water into wine. It's like a
Yes.
like you said.
Yeah, that's a water into wine.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
From unbelief to belief, which all these things point to, going from
Life to death.
death to life. Yes, and we see that movement a lot because it's the purpose of John's Gospel 20:31. These are written so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing you might have life in his name. So the reason he's written this whole gospel is for that. And so that's why we see that movement throughout the gospel. There it is. Hey, Luke.
Hello. Oh, Luke, how are you?
Come on down. Spot for you right over here.
Grab a cup while you're here, while you're there. We've got
Yeah.
scones and jam in here.
So there's a general movement moving from belief to unbelief, from death to life, which displays the purpose of the gospel. So these slides are often to keep me interested, not you. I enjoy it. Yeah, they're pretty sexy. Yeah.
Do you use animation?
Oh, not in this, because when you zoom, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
When you put it as a background at Zoom, that won't do it. Yeah, but if it was just us and we didn't need to record these, yeah, it would be fun. Anyway, let's get into 5 and 6. Basically, this section, well, these chapters, basically 5 to 7, see a growing opposition to Jesus. Beginning with the familiar pattern of a miraculous sign followed by an explanation leading to a response. But here we're seeing the response is getting more and more anti-Jesus, more and more serious. Even
That's because they're trying to get a response from people. But
well, no, I think the response from the Jews is getting not just, oh, you're an idiot, to, hey, this man's bad, no, to, we need to kill this guy. So there's a growing opposition.
okay, I was thinking the general people though, that when they dropped away from Jesus after
Yes.
did the feeding the 5,000.
Yeah. Some said this is too hard.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Now the basic structure of the first part. Do we need to read it, or do we? Can you remember what happened here with the guy at the pool of Bethesda?
It's got a general idea.
Got a general idea? Okay, cool. Well, basically, you get the introduction. This is this could almost be English teacher kind of analysis of a text, couldn't it? You get the background information, setting the scene, introduction to the characters. Then you get the action, verses 6 to 8, the miraculous healing, or in this case, it is a sign, so the next sign. Then you bit of a excursus, a bit of an explanation.
9 out of 10, the first section is the orientation.
The orientation. Nice. Yes. Yeah. In narratively speaking, yes.
Yes, sir.
Orientation. Then there's the action. There's some
The
type
conflict.
of conflict. Yeah. Then an excursus, an explanation. Hey, guess what? There's more information. All this took place on the Sabbath, leading into the next scene, the confrontation. And then it's like, more explanation. This man didn't even know Jesus. Then leading into the next confrontation, which then concludes with this rising opposition of the Jews. And then there's a debate about the Sabbath.
It's actually a really beautifully written book.
In so many ways.
I do like it. It's incredible. So much thought given to the structure.
Yeah, and think this is how long ago?
Yeah.
You know.
That's
2000
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when
So
did you expect them, were they?
no.
So
We
they tend to think they're back in the dark ages, but they're just
Well,
Well,
it's
on
just
the same
yesterday,
build
really.
up of it.
we tend to think 60 years ago people were stupid.
Well,
You know.
But you listen to something
I
on the,
wasn't, I'm sure, 60 years
wasn't,
ago,
no.
I wasn't.
I this is something in ancient, when the Romans went to Egypt, and of course the pyramids were ancient history to them.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the basic structure of this little part of the narrative. So if you want to have a look in verse 7, somebody want to read verse 7 for us?
Sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me.
So Jesus has said, do you want to be healed? And this is his response.
Mm.
My question is, how is this response similar to Nicodemus in chapter 3 and similar to the Samaritan woman at the well in chapter 4?
Well, they're very open to.
Okay, yes, they're very open to talking with Jesus, yes.
They don't know who he is.
They don't know who he is,
Yeah.
yes, or they might have a limited understanding, a very limited understanding of who he is, yes.
Very
exactly.
concrete idea about what's going to happen. Very earthly.
Very earthly, very concrete, isn't it? Yeah, how can I be born again? Can a man re-enter, or the Samaritan woman? Well, no, I'm not supposed to get water from this well. Oh, and we're supposed to worship at this point. It's all very earthly thinking. And this guy too, Jesus says, do you want to be healed? And he says, well,
Can't do that.
obviously there was something special about the water and the first triples, and whoever gets in there first gets healed.
It
And
was it seems a bit odd, doesn't it? It was only the first person.
yeah. And so it's like an earthly way of thinking.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get to, those kind of ideas. But yes, they are very open. Yeah.
He's so secretive, Jesus. This whole thing, and I think it's like he's trying to hide his identity.
Yep.
He replied, first up, I think Wendy said this, that people don't know who he is. Then Jesus said, get up, pick up your mat and walk. And once the man was cured, he picked up his mat and walked. And then he replied, the man who made me well, the man.
Yes.
And then picked up your mat and walked. And so he asked him, who was this fellow who told you to pick up? The man who was healed had no idea who it was.
Yeah.
But Jesus had slipped away into the crowd.
That's why he didn't know who it was. Yes.
Sort of a lot more, what's the word I'm thinking of? Subversive.
Well, it's not, hey, look at me, here I am.
That's
More
right.
inconspicuous.
Inconspicuous. Yes.
But you reckon that bloke could have, if he'd have wanted to, really could have perhaps found out who he was.
Well, yeah,
Having a face-to-face encounter.
that
with
is
him.
interesting, isn't it?
Well, did he look
And
at
he
Jesus
hasn't.
though? He was
Yeah.
talking to this man.
Well, he took his,
He would have been on the ground and the man was standing up.
How would you know what he looked like?
He may not have looked up to his face.
yeah, but if he then picked up his mat and walked, it's not, he obviously just went, oh, cool, and walked, didn't go, oh, who are you?
Oh,
How's
that's
this
not
look
like
like?
it's
Curiosity, like Who on
Yeah.
earth was that? Who was
Yeah.
that masked man?
There's jam if you.
But then we get to the end of the scene kind of thing. But so here's another question. What are some of the similarities and differences between the way that this encounter with Jesus finishes? We'll start to look at it then. And the way that we're told the encounters with Nicodemus and then the Samaritan woman, how they finished. So, how did they finish in the narrative kind of thing?
Well, the Samaritan woman was believed in basically what he was telling her, and she wanted to share that information with her friends and family.
Excellent. She believed, she shared it. The whole town came to Jesus on her testimony about who he is. Yeah. So that was different to this guy. This guy just walked away.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Nicodemus is part of the establishment, so I think he wants to know for himself,
But how's it end? We don't know.
It's ticking over in his mind, perhaps.
Yeah, see, but even in the narrative, we're not told how it,
Yeah.
with Nicodemus it ends.
But it's not like this. He's just left the situation. It's like, I don't know. I imagine he just gets up and walks off.
Yeah, well, that's what it
Without
just says, isn't it? Without a backward glance,
Yeah,
without a care.
I
Yeah,
don't know. That
Jesus
may
may
not
have
be
been
that
standing
way.
there and he just walked away.
maybe.
He was told to go.
well, remember
Get
Jesus
up and go.
melted into the crowd, and
Well,
Yeah.
when did Jesus melt into the crowd?
But it doesn't say he looked around for him.
No.
But
But
being
it could
fair,
have. He could have.
but being fair, Jesus came to him,
Mm,
whereas Nicodemus came to Jesus.
that's true.
Yeah.
True.
That's different.
And even with the Samaritan woman, she was just there.
Yeah.
Jesus came to her and said, "Hey, get me a drink."
Yeah.
But then the difference is in the ending. She then wanted to know who he was, wanted to know all about it, and went and shared it. He didn't want to know who it was,
Mm.
didn't want to share who it was.
Mm.
So there's things that are saying, so it's just, I don't know what point there is to these. I just think these are very interesting things to notice, and I'm sure there is a point to it. I just don't want to say that's this point because I'm not exactly. Yeah. Anyway,
The reason why
I'm just raising it so we can think about it.
this reason why John included these particular encounters and not others. He's selective.
Yes. And we know the reason he was selective, so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing have life in his name.
Yes.
So it's one of those things, once you learn it, it's like the definition of irony. I learned that in year 9. It's the only thing I learned in English, sorry.
You still remember it?
Irony is a mocking discrepancy between appearance and reality, or
That's
promise and
right, that's
fulfillment.
yes, he
Very
does.
good definition. Well done.
Well, it's J.I. Packer, not J.I. Goodwin Packer, Parramatta High School. Every student who,
I didn't learn
It's true.
anything.
well, every
Put one
student,
up on me.
well, it was him. Every student that he taught remembered when he retired, we had T-shirts with his face and definition printed on it.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
It's very good.
So, but you know, the purpose of John's Gospel is one of those things like that.
What appears to be and what is.
All right, let's then keep going. Jesus then interacts with the Jews. And what are the basic 2 accusations levelled against Jesus by the Jews here? Yep.
And he's claiming to be God's son.
Yes. Yes.
What's the worst of those? Would it be the godson accusation, or that he's doing thing on the Sabbath, which God forbids?
I know. You would think that it would be God's son that would be the biggest deal, wouldn't you? But what did they make the biggest deal over? The fact that he was doing this on the Sabbath. Again, we've got this focus on the earthly, not on the heavenly. The heavenly reality is he's claiming to be the Son of God because that's who
More
he is.
easily provable.
I haven't,
Well, yeah, actually, that's true too.
you know,
We can get you on that charge.
We get you on
Have
that
to get a
charge.
bit more for this one.
Yeah.
Sorry, what you gonna say? Then?
oh, no, it's not important. I just. Once again, back to this idea, Jesus was subversive because of doing the Sabbath. Doing this on the Sabbath is a real subversive act, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Provoking, isn't
It's
it?
provoking.
It's very provocative.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Jesus didn't do any work because he didn't do anything. He just said, "Get up, your,
That's right.
pick up your mat."
Yeah.
What he's saying now is that he told the man to work.
Hmm.
He told the man
That's
to do what was illegal.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
And the man did it without question.
Absolutely, which is again bizarre to me, but anyway. So then we get into this whole debate about the Sabbath. You know, and what's all this about? I thought, and I had a nice little picture here to go with it. What light? We are talking about light in God's gospel. Might Hebrews 4:1-11 shed on the issue of the Sabbath for us? So who would like to read Hebrews 4:1-11?
You're the guy that really likes Hebrews.
Yeah. It is. Well, it was, I taught it to the third years in Chile, and so when you have to teach, it's got the hardest Greek, and so when you have to teach the hardest Greek in Spanish, you really need to get to know the letter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, I reckon Hebrews has an answer to just about every issue in the whole New or Old Testament.
Is that right?
Oh, I love
yeah,
it.
sort of.
So
Makes-
good. Yeah.
Okay.
Everything. Beautiful. All right, somebody reading Hebrews 4:1-11 for us, and keep in mind the question, or what's this talking about the Sabbath? How might this help us?
I can read.
Thank you.
Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. For we also have had the good news proclaimed to us, just as they did. But the message they heard was of no value to them, because they did not share the faith of those who obeyed. Now we who have believed enter that rest, just as God has said. So I declared on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. And yet his works have been finished since the creation of the world. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in these words. On the seventh day God rested from all his works. And again in the passage above he says, they shall never enter my rest. Therefore, since it still remains for some to enter that rest, and since those who formerly had the good news proclaimed to them did not go in because of their disobedience, God again set a certain day, calling it today. This he did when a long time later he spoke through David, as in the passage already quoted. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience.
Oh, it's just so rich. I just spent hours talking about that.
We could actually.
But we won't. But just thinking about the whole idea of Sabbath rest,
And how precious and sacred it was.
how precious sacred it was. Yes. So what light does that shed on it for us?
Well, I think you can understand why the Jews, even though they're not necessarily representative of the whole people, but this is what they believe. This is
Yes,
a very strong part of their own faith.
absolutely. Well, it's also for us, for you and I.
But if you feel someone is breaking that Sabbath rest because they're making those outrageous claims that they can do so because the Father said they could, well, you'd be a little bit out, I think.
Yep. And so you're still thinking earthly, not heavenly. But what's it saying in Hebrews? That there is yet a rest that remains. So there is the earthly Sabbath isn't the true meaning of the Sabbath, the Sabbath rest. See what I'm saying? It's kind of like he's talking the rest in heaven, which is heaven.
The rest God had after his 6 days of work.
Yes, and we are part of that. If what earlier on in that passage was it say?
We do not harden our hearts.
Yes, we do not
listen to
harden-
his voice.
Listen to his voice, and basically obedience to his voice, which is belief. It says it earlier on in the passage. They believed and entered his rest. And so, again, I think in John, it's like getting caught up with the earthly thing, but the reality is a heavenly rest. And it's by believing, being obedient, believing in Jesus, that you enter that rest.
Could be what Nicodemus, is open to this interpretation, even though you don't quite believe it yet. Because as the teacher himself, he'd be familiar with the nuances, I think, of this,
Yes, absolutely.
more so than the ordinary people, I would think.
I would think so, yeah.
And in contrast to that, we
Yes.
have in verse 17, where Jesus says, my Father is always at his work to this
Yeah.
very day. And I too am working.
So that despite his 6 days of creation and his rest on the 7th day, he has not stopped upholding the world and working for our salvation.
So what does that say about God's rest?
It is still to be completed.
It's it's the eternal rest that he's talking about. Again, we're not talking earthly, we're talking eternal here. Yeah. And that's the rest that he wants people to enter. That's more important. Yeah, it's I just think it's amazing to spend hours just on each one of these verses.
So we're going to do Hebrews one day?
You
Is
sure?
that a PTC subject?
I don't know.
We'll just do it.
Maybe we can just do it. Yeah. When we run out of PTC subjects, we'll write our own.
Michael was saying in his recent prayer letter
Yes.
from Tanzania that in the local culture, they have no concept of heaven.
Okay.
When you die, that's it.
Yep.
So these concepts of the heavenly rest are difficult to get across.
Very. Because you have to go back a step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the hope that we have as Christians, doesn't it?
And so that's a very radical thing then. Look,
Because they're very much into animism and the
Yeah,
spirit world.
but it all ends when you die. So
But-
you have the best life you can get while you're alive.
It's just-
so it's good. So it ends up being no. The radical thing that Christianity is bringing to that culture is that this life isn't all there is.
Yeah.
So whereas for other cultures it's an assumption, and the radical thing is trusting in Jesus.
Yeah.
You got to go back a step and go. Just the fact that there is eternal life is a radical thing. Yeah.
There is anything after death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep moving through verses 19 to 23. The title is That You May Marvel. As we get to verses 19 to 23, my question is, how does Jesus answer the two accusations leveled against him by the Jews?
Are we talking about the same two accusations?
Yes, Sabbath and Son of God.
Well, as Glenn's pointed out, his father is always working, so father works on the Sabbath, so therefore other people can,
Or
For good
he
purpose.
does, or the Son
or
does,
he
yes.
can.
So he kind of links the two at that point, doesn't he?
He's linking himself with the Father.
Yes,
Yes.
very much, very strong.
And so he's linking the
God is
Sabbath,
Father.
he's linking both the accusations together and
Yeah.
saying, hey, it's part of the one bigger answer, isn't it?
Yeah, making himself equal with God.
Yeah. How else does he answer?
Actually, I'm not sure he does make
Mm.
himself equal with God, because he talks about God as his father. And so he's not claiming equality.
Yeah.
He's claiming the relationship.
I think the claim here was that he was claiming to be God's son.
Yes.
So he's saying, yes, I am.
Yes, I'm God's son.
And since whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically he's saying, they're going, you're saying you're God's son. Yep. Yes, I am. And that's bad news for you.
And it's the truth.
Yeah. That's one way of answering an accusation, isn't it? They're trying to make it bad and you go, owning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now they got to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
It's like it says not guilty, then for the prosecution say, well, here's why.
Mm.
And so, what about the Sabbath? Does he answer that in these verses, 19 to 23?
He just says his father's at work, and so he is too.
Yep. It's because of his relationship that it's a earthly reality, I mean, a heavenly reality, and you're going to see heavenly reality on earth when I'm here with you. Yeah. So
That's a big concept.
yeah. He walked on earth showing glimpses of heaven. Demons, death, disease had no hand.
So does Jesus breaking the Sabbath?
No,
No, I mean, in their terms, does that give license to other people to break the Sabbath, or only insofar as they put extra rules? in
If they
the
could
way?
say they're the son of God too. Then I guess they
Yeah.
can.
well, I don't think Jesus. I think Jesus is saying he is not breaking any laws.
Yeah.
They've
but he's
misinterpreted the
breaking
laws.
Yes.
I think,
Their
idea of the
version
law.
isn't he liberating people away from this, the law itself?
is
In the
Man-made addendums.
I know that in itself sounds a little bit too sort of radical, but because it's not asking them to break the law, more this obsession with the law.
yes.
Mm.
We've got a guy at our church. You probably know Louise and Trevor Fox too.
I don't know.
Trevor was brought up a
Louise
Jew.
comes to book club now and then.
Ah, I know who she is.
Yeah, well,
I
Trevor's
like that.
brought up a Jew. He converted after he's gone through all those initiations they had and everything. And he's a really interesting person to speak to about all this.
Oh, he's fantastic.
He's got a really good explanation about this idea of the law and working on the Sabbath, and the extremes they went to.
And
Well,
still,
one-
are still going.
Well, he
Yeah.
was telling me that he was at a youth camp thing, and so and they were there on the Sabbath, and they were within everything had to be done, so there was no work on the Sabbath.
Mm.
But when they were in the house, he could have his handkerchief in his pocket. If they left the house, they would tuck it under their watch because they were no longer carrying it,
Mm.
because it's part of their clothes. But if it
Yeah,
was in his
wearing-
pockets, he was carrying it. If it was tucked under his watch, he was just wearing it.
There's legalism.
And so they had to do that to leave the house.
It's like the traffic lights down at the river. You've got the big Jewish population down in Sydney.
Yep.
They're on a cycle on a Saturday, so they don't have to press the button
Yes.
or the lifts.
And they
to-
put a
they'll
big
stop
fence
at every
around
floor.
Longclay.
That sounds like.
Or
getting
every
around-
second
So
floor.
it's all,
getting
Yes.
around the
they can go
spirit.
anywhere within that.
They can go anywhere within that
Yeah.
fence there. Yeah, yeah. But it's
So I
just,
think there was this obsession with the law
it is.
Yeah.
because it's a way of controlling people.
Yes. Oh, and again, it's whole the focus on what we do
Yeah.
to earn
Yeah.
our
Jesus
salvation.
had no need to keep man-made rules.
No.
Is it here or somewhere else that Jesus said, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the
Oh,
Sabbath.
when
was
they
That was in
got the
Matthew.
wheat
And,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
the fields.
and referring back to David getting the,
Yeah.
Mm.
the sacred bread in Samuel, I think it was.
Mm.
Yeah. Was it 2 Samuel? No, I think it was 1 Samuel.
Yeah.
All right. It's very cool. Okay, so John actually could be one big chiasm, but John is full of chiasms. People know what a chiasm
There's
is?
a definition of this thing.
Okay. A chiasm is basically was a literary structure where you would, to make a point, you would kind of build up to it. So I don't know, you talk about something here on one level, and the same thing would be said at the other end. Then you talk about the same thing here and here, talk about the same thing here and here, and your main point was in the middle. But it all kind of built towards your main point. But it built up to it and then built back down, saying the same kinds of things on either side. So you can identify, well, people go overboard. Some people identify the whole Bible as one big chiasm, focusing on the middle verse of Psalm 119. Yeah. Anyway, that's too much. But sometimes, especially in the Greek writing, they do, that's the way they write these things. So you go, and so you understand what's important. And I think this is a pretty good example of a chiasm. So basically it says, Jesus gave them this answer, the Son can do nothing by himself, only what his Father does. Verse 30, I do nothing, I only judge as I hear, my judgment is, so it's kind of like the Son does nothing on his own. The next level, the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Does he so be amazed? Verse 26 and 27. Oh, sorry, verse 28. Do not be amazed at this, for the time is coming. As well done. Then you go to the next level. For as the Father raises the dead and gives life, even so the Son gives life. On the other end, it's for the Father has life in himself. He has granted the Son to have life in himself. You can see how they kind of match. But then in the middle, the most important thing is whoever hears the voice of Jesus
And
has
believes.
life, is moving from death to life. And so all those other, and so, yeah, it's just a way of going, here's one thing, next thing, next thing. This is the most important thing because I'm showing you that then there's the other levels on the way out again. It's, and they call it a chiasm because it's kind of like an X for chi.
Oh, see,
Yeah, it crosses over. Yeah. But I love them. And especially in the Greek text, there's a lot of them. They're sometimes a bit harder to find in the English translations, but the same words and phrases and even the tenses, and they're all used to show these things sometimes. Other times they can just be on the general theme. You know, talking about the Son and the Father doing the same thing there and there. Talking about one is here, one is there. Talking about life here, life there. Therefore, it's talking about the leaf in the middle.
So our modern translations don't necessarily reflect that as well as they did
I just
years ago? Or?
no, it's just English doesn't reflect it as well as Greek. Yeah, as the language is written in. Well, it's kind of like the old Hebrew poetry. We'll read it and not realize it's poetry because we're not reading it in Hebrew.
But it's across, you know,
Yeah.
it starts with each letter of the alphabet.
Yeah, or
but
acrostics.
then
Yeah.
Process of
Yeah, yeah.
no.
and there are psalms there's this kind of pattern.
There are, yeah. Anyway, so if that's what it's pointing to, I think I've given away the question. What information do you think this structure can give us? What is most important is Jesus saying, whoever hears my word and believes in him who sent me has eternal life. He moved from death to life. I tell you, time is coming, and now has come, and the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and know that he will live. So it's hearing and believing Jesus means you move from death to life. It's everywhere. I love it. It's everywhere. Okay, I have my first of a few quotes this week from the notes. Page 53, funny little quote. I think it's gold. When there's some gold quotes, I put them in. As you know, I put them in gold even. The Father's love for the Son means that the Son now becomes the one who brings God's salvation, resulting in resurrection and eternal life for those he chooses. Which is kind of the point of this little section. That's the way he answers the accusations. All right, and then we get on to the life-giving work of the Son in verses 24 to 30. And I've kind of given away already what the movement we're seeing here, but let's see if we can see it again in verses 24 to 30. What is the good that people have done in verse 28? Did I get that right? Verse 28.
Do not be amazed at this, for the time is coming, and all who are in the graves will hear his voice. That's what I mean.
From death to life.
Yeah.
Verse 29,
In a very physical way.
those who have done what is good will rise to live.
Yep. Well, that's what you're saying. Those who have done the good will rise to live. But I think verse 28 is the definition of that good. And you said it was hearing his voice. And that is supposed to make us marvel. That's all it takes to cross from death to life.
Sorry, I missed something here.
Sorry.
So the question, what is the good that people have done in verse 28?
Yep.
So the good.
All who hear the voice of him.
All right.
That's what I'm saying is when we think of
That's more of a passive.
it is
Rather than when you say,
Yeah.
that's why I get confused too sometimes in the readings and when it talks about the questions we get from that. The questions on exam, they'll give a question saying, well, not at the meeting, but what would you think this, something like that, what is the good? And it might be something less obvious in the answer than what you expected. So that makes sense.
but again, it's taking the focus away from what we think we can do
Oh, yeah.
and putting it back on what Jesus has done, because it's his voice. All we did is listen In John's Gospel, it says, you know, what does he say? And what are the good works that it requires to get into heaven? To believe in the one God sent.
It's not,
That's the good work.
it's not hearing. It's actually listening.
Well, yeah,
Believing.
I think the hearing at this point really implies not just, oh, I heard those words,
Believing.
but hearing, taking them to heart and believing and
So,
trusting.
is
and all
there a
that.
difference in the Greek between hearing and listening?
It's hearing with a capital H. In quotation.
This is actually, it can be translated to listen
Right.
as well as to hear.
From the context.
But with the context would say it's more than just
I think you should go,
hearing the words.
you hear,
Because I heard my parents.
but listening's not the
do
end
all
of
the
it.
time when I
Listening's not the end.
never listened.
Beg your pardon? You go here, then you have listen, then you got another stage, and that's understand.
I think it's all implied. Understand, and not only then understand, but then believe and trust.
Mm,
Because you might understand it but not trust it.
that's right, yeah.
I don't think you have to understand it. You just have to believe it.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe. But I think-
Understanding helps
Yes.
Well, I think sometimes you can't believe without understanding, and
sometimes.
sometimes you can't understand but you still trust.
But you
That's
take it on
right.
faith.
Yeah, you take
I mean, you
things,
can, that's true, you just trust, but
take things on trust.
there are those people who need to understand a lot more than others.
Mm.
Uh,
I don't understand why God chose me.
But you trust that he.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
That's part of the quick.
So it's
That is a
it's
huge
never black
mystery.
and white. Yeah.
Who
It's
is-
not a science kind of.
Yeah, it's true.
Sorry, what you're saying, Minnie?
Who is the his in verse 28? Jesus is speaking, but he says, we'll hear his voice. Is he talking about
His own-
himself
Yes.
as the Son of Man
Yes.
or God?
Yeah,
He's talking about himself.
I thought so, but he keeps saying I, myself, but there he says his voice. So I thought I'd better check.
in the preceding verse, he talks about himself
Because
in
he
the
is
third
the Son of
person.
Man.
Yeah. He gave authority to him
Mm,
because the Son of Man, marvel at this, because they will hear his as in the Son of Man.
mm,
So the his is referring back to the Son of Man.
yeah. Just checking.
No, very good. Always, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. I'm not here to reread the notes with you. I'm here to help you think and check
Clarify.
and clarify. Yep.
yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
What's that?
oh, I really enjoy what we do.
Yeah, me too.
Things here, but just trying to touch on something which I find is the nature of the multiple choice questions, because they really try to sort of, you're talking about, some of the stuff we read here is so sort of profound. To
Mm,
reduce it to multiple choice questions
It doesn't do it justice, does it?
doesn't do it justice at all.
mm.
And
Yeah.
And-
you can get a good mark in the exam without really understanding.
and
it.
And you can understand a lot more and not get a good mark.
and there's and you, by the nature of this, we're discussing and we're getting things out of it, but we, as Tony mentioned, the nuances and stuff like that. It just doesn't do it justice.
Yeah. Well, in the end, doesn't matter. What matters is what we get.
That's what we'll get out of it. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, yeah.
Don't put any stock in.
I just feel that
No,
it's a cheap way of doing
Yeah.
it, and it is a
Yeah,
cheap.
well, again, I had this issue when I was a student at Moore College and brought it up with them, but in the end their hands were tied. They couldn't do anything
Of
about
course,
it.
they couldn't. Yeah,
It's kind of like, because they're an educational institution, they have to have these things. And I'm like, we're always saying the most important thing is your character, and kind of like as a cohort, we're to love one another, not to try and strive to. So why are those who help other people and help us all, and we all grow in our character and our understanding, they're not rewarded with the honours that those who are locked themselves in their study and just study and get all the right answers are given? So they don't get the same honour, but they actually should be giving more honour because they're the ones sacrificing. Well, in our case, there was guys who sacrificed going from 95 to 100. They went from 95 to 90, so that there was the rest of us would get from 45 to 50.
Well,
That's lovely.
it's probably
And it's
management
beautiful.
decision, and it's the same, and it's not just the same in
No,
theology, it's the same in everywhere. The
it's the
paper's
same.
not about, oh, no, look at all these teachers, ATARs are 75. They make better teachers than people with ATARs of 90, I can tell you.
Exactly, because they're probably more,
Because they're people.
they're people, yeah.
And it's, you know,
Less,
It's the same-
less selfish.
yes, it's the same with everything else. It's just fucking.
Yeah. And,
Anyway, I'm sorry, I went off right off.
no, but you're right, because we're all educated. Well, we're educators here. Well, these are the things we struggle with. They're close to our heart. Anyway, sorry, but we got space to do that. Okay, so here's my next quote from page 53. Present realities and future events are contained within the same truth, that the Son gives life to the dead. And so that's why he's posed it as kind of a present. Now is the time to put your trust in Jesus, in the Son, because he gives life to the dead. And John's the one who talks about have life, abundant life in the Son.
Mm.
So he's trying to make this point that the heavenly things are present reality in Jesus.
It's not just being alive, it's actually having a life.
Yes. Well, yeah.
In the current way of
Yeah.
meaning it.
Yeah. So again, and I think we often don't want to go, we'll come to it when we get there, but we don't want to go on about it because of the abuses that some parts of the Christian church can make about abundant life now and having an over-realised eschatology where you must have all things now. And so we want to say, oh no, now is all about suffering, which Bible obviously says it is. But no, we also got to say life now with Jesus is better than without Jesus.
So eternity starts when you accept Jesus.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's what should be emphasised over all the good things you might get.
Now, yes.
I think
now.
Yeah.
I think there's big emphasis on things, the wrong emphasis on things.
Yeah. But to avoid that, I don't want us to say, oh no, life as a Christian is really tough and always terrible.
No.
No, life with Jesus is better
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
than life without Jesus.
Yeah.
I think we've swung the other way so as not to go whole prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
But I think we can swing too far and just go, no, let's understand
Mm.
life with Jesus now is better.
Yeah.
It's not just all.
Yeah, I
No.
agree with you, and I agree. I think that's the reason why that prosperity gospel and Wimberism and all that sort of stuff.
But those kids talking about baptism Sunday
Yes.
and just saying how much sense it makes of their life,
Yeah.
that they've got a purpose.
Yeah.
It makes their life better, doesn't it?
Well, life is, but even if it doesn't make our life perfect and better, life with Jesus is better now,
Yeah.
not just in eternity.
Not one of those kids mentioned any physical thing
No,
as a benefit.
no.
Spiritual blessing.
How-
Spiritual thing.
Oh, sorry, Tony, you missed it.
Amazing kids they
It's
were the
baptism
way-
Sunday at our church, and so there's 8 young people getting baptised tonight.
Kids tend to speak better now.
And we,
Very
because it's one
confident
church,
thing.
during the week they gave kind of we videoed kind of why they're getting baptised and a bit of their testimony and why they're a Christian, and we show it at all our gatherings.
Yeah, I haven't seen the video.
Still haven't seen it yet?
Yeah,
Oh, you'll see it
I'm
tonight.
going to see it tonight.
Yeah, spoiler
Right.
alert.
See the real
Spoiler
thing.
alert, it's good.
Well, that's good.
It's
They're a wonderful bunch of young people. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that
Good.
yeah, it's a good point about the what you're saying about living, being changing your life now and emphasising that. That's a really good point.
And it wasn't actually here, it's where John says later, but I thought I was thinking about it, we may as well talk about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Because it's related to present realities and future events combined in the same truth. The Son gives life to the dead. All right,
Spiritually didn't.
let's look at verses 31 to 47. And Jesus calls witnesses to testify about who he is. So what I want us to do is to name a witness from each of these verses that I've listed. Verses 33 to 35. What witness does Jesus call?
John.
And we're talking John the Baptist here. We're not talking John, the author of the Gospel.
We are
Yeah,
talking
John
about
the
Yep.
Baptist
And what does he say about John?
was a lamp that burned and gave light,
Yes.
and you chose for a time to enjoy his light. Chose for a time. So
Mm.
it's temporary, ephemeral.
Mm.
And he is only human.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yes, he shed the light on who Jesus is.
Mm.
And see, he was able to say that because I think a lot of the crowd still very pro John the Baptist,
That's right, yeah.
held him in high esteem
Mm,
and recognised he was a prophet.
Mm.
mm.
So yeah, verse 36,
So would that have been before his death?
maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly, but
It's hard to know
hard
because
to
John
know.
isn't chronological.
I assume 36 is Jesus is the witness to the Father, isn't he? Or another Father, because he's fulfilling his Father's will.
The works he's doing. The work
Yeah.
testifies.
yes, I think
His
what
actions.
Jesus is doing testifies.
Mm.
And so we've got to think the signs at this point, because we're in the book of signs, don't forget.
Mm-hmm. So that's 36, 37.
Yep.
The Father has testified.
Yes. And then verses 38 to 40. Or the scriptures even.
Yeah.
Well, the Jewish leaders should be teaching the scriptures, yes.
Oh, so just John is John the Baptist in 33.
Yeah.
So first to John is actually John.
Yeah.
John the Baptist.
Yeah, John the Baptist in verse 33, yeah. So you got John the Baptist, the works Jesus is doing, the Father, and the scriptures. And so remember the Jews thought 3 witnesses was more than enough. But there's 4.
One was not enough.
1 was not enough, 2 was good, 3 was more than enough. Jesus got 4. I mean, if he's really serious, he would have got to 7, but anyway.
Or 12.
Is 4 an important number in itself? You know how 7 is
Yeah, I'm
an
not sure.
important number. Is
I'm
4
not sure.
one of
I'm not
those?
sure at this point if it is an important number. I'm not sure that it's significant here in John.
East, west, south, and north. It's got some significance, I suppose, in cultures, and, as being directions, etc.
Yep.
Yeah.
The 4 winds. Yeah. I don't know.
4 seasons.
I don't know that it is significant here, but it may well be.
I just
You know,
wondered,
Jesus.
you know, there's so many
There's-
numbers that have significance, and if you don't know, you don't see what that is.
Yeah. It can, yeah, but you don't need to know to see.
That's
what's
true.
talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then Jesus flips it around, and from going as the accused, he then flips it to be the accuser.
Yeah, using their own evidence against them. So
Yeah, and so I had this part was verses 31 to 47. The title is, "But did Israel want to be healed?" And I just had to throw in a joke. I hope it's not offensive to anyone. How many social workers does it take to change a light bulb? Just 1, but a light bulb has got to want to change.
Yes,
I amuse myself.
Shame you should have kept that back until Lewis was back.
Yeah, well, I was hoping. I did check. I'm not going to offend Lewis with this, am I?
No, you wouldn't.
No, but they assured me no.
Of course it wouldn't.
He's probably heard it heaps.
Yeah. But it's true. You know, did Israel really want to be healed? Well, actually, they didn't get healed because they really didn't want it. And so then Jesus flips it, and he becomes the judge rather than the accused. So verse 39 and then verses 45 to 47. What's the charge?
They didn't even believe Moses.
well, they have the scriptures in front of them. They should know what it says, but they don't. They haven't made the correct interpretation.
Yep. Yeah, he's saying, you're ignoring the witness of the scriptures. So that's one charge, yep.
And people like Nicodemus, who's part of that group,
Maybe you're there.
Well, he has seen this, so maybe he sees the contradiction too. But
Yep.
Reasons he's
Okay, so
inquire about it.
So the message of the scriptures is accusing you, Jews. This testimony is accusing you. What other testimony we got in verses 40? Who else is accusing them?
Well, Moses as part of the scripture, I suppose.
Yeah, well, that's what he's saying. Even more so, Moses, whom you say you're following, irony, is actually accusing you because you're not following him.
Yeah,
And he wrote about Jesus.
it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Some of the
He was
Pharisees,
he's another one to testify.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Yeah, yeah.
some of the Pharisees were converted,
Yep.
but why didn't they get it? You know, Richard.
You mentioned earlier,
Oh.
they're more earthbound than heavenbound.
Could have been more earthbound. They could have. There's a lot of theories, and I don't know their hearts, but I suspect it was power too.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot.
They
of
didn't want to lose their power.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's yeah,
that's why they had to kill him.
it's a fair interpretation, but when you look at their condition, the social and political conditions at the time, it's pretty devastating. They had their own sort of scriptural power, theological power.
Yeah.
But the Romans were the powerful ones. And in the end, it ended up an absolute disaster for them.
But they did, the religious leaders did have some genuine power within their own society.
With their own
Yeah.
society, I mean,
It's
the Romans
civil
were,
law and
the
stuff
Romans.
like that.
yeah, that's what the Romans did. They
The
gave,
Romans could overrule them.
But
But that's
there
what they.
was
But
some
that's how the
power.
Romans maintained power, wasn't it?
that's right, because they, you know, they went,
They say you're autonomous, but you're high. We're their higher authority. But
And
you're
so
autonomous.
if they upset the Romans, they may lose that power altogether.
that's right, yeah.
But the Romans were always also the other way. They didn't want their local leaders to upset the Jews, or they would lose their strongholds as well.
That's right. So eventually it did end up in disaster for
They
them.
didn't want a civil disorder.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that whereas on we've portrayed in film and on television, a real conflict between the Roman authorities, particularly at the time of the crucifixion, between the Roman authorities and the Palestinian, the Jewish authorities. I just, you know, I think it comes back to power. I think you're right.
Or and the reason Jesus was a bit secretive is because their idea of a Messiah was an earthly political Messiah.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you're not going to be that guy, we're going to get no. We don't want that.
Yeah.
If what it means to have a Messiah is not that, we don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
Messiah God sends, we'll have our own.
Well,
Yeah.
in the end,
If we have any
that's
at all.
in the end, that's what Jesus is saying.
Yeah.
This is God sending you your Messiah. You know, who are you to say how it should be? Yeah.
I always have the feeling that some of them did recognise but didn't want to act on it.
Okay.
But I don't know why. I haven't got anything to back that up, but I just feel that because of the power they lose and
Yeah.
politics maybe
That's right.
bypass.
Face. That might be his face, because
Better for one man to die. or-
yeah, well, you
I
have to
don't
be
know.
pretty humble to go, hey, we got it wrong,
Yeah.
to the people who you're
Yeah.
supposed to be superior to.
Well, you don't say that. You just change sides.
Well, yeah, that's what we do now. Yeah. All right, let's move into chapter 6. Now, the notes give a title to verses 1 to 15 and verses 22 to 24 as a new Moses, question mark. My question is, why do you think this title would be given to these verses? Because
Leading
remember,
into,
this is the feeding and the response.
well, leading to the promised land.
No, verse 10.
Manna from heaven. Yeah, verse 10. What does verse 10 say?
Make the people sit down. So that's,
Well,
I mean, Moses had to do that kind of thing.
okay, yeah. Yeah, he was organising them. Yeah.
Are they in the desert? Yeah,
No.
no, not this time.
They're on the shore
They
of
are
the
in one of
Galilee.
the accounts.
Yeah,
but
in
I
the,
can't
one of the
remember
one of the
which
one of the
that
feedings
is.
are in the world, a remote area.
Yeah.
Now, I think Tony's hit it. It's like he's talking about manna from heaven,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's through this leader.
Hmm.
And you think this miracle would be enough to sway everybody?
But they weren't paying attention. They thought they'd rushed out to the shops and bought the bread.
I won't go into any more jokes. Anyway. Yeah, okay. Well, just remember that when the feeding and the response to it, it's kind of like, because remember that some people grumbled against Moses as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think we're meant to be going, okay, this is the true Moses, the new Moses, to rescue God's people.
Are they going to pay attention this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then in verses 16 to 21, where Jesus comes to his disciples, I got two questions. What is John trying to highlight in this short section? And what is interesting about verse 20?
Looking at verse 20, I'd say the interesting thing is don't be afraid. Why should they be afraid of Jesus?
Who normally says, do not fear? When,
God.
yeah, or when there's angels visiting, first thing I always say is do not fear. So a messenger from God, presence of God. If you're in the presence of God, first thing you're going to need to know, do not fear.
I'm not here to kill you.
There's that, but you said it again, or
I am with you.
even take out the for I am.
I am. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. Here's a little I am.
Yep, it is I.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't say that.
But in the Greek, it's the ego eimi, which is the I am, which is the exact same words the Greek Old Testament says.
God's
God,
name.
its name is the ego eimi.
What's the Greek word? It was the Greek word for I am, ego.
Ego,
That's
I.
Latin. That's Latin for I
Amy.
am too. That's
Ego.
interesting.
Yeah, the ego is the I, the eimi is the I am.
Okay.
So it's kind of like an I am.
Yeah.
So it's not just, normally if it's just you're saying I'm this, I'm that, you just use the aim. But
I
when you
think
put
I'm
the,
twice as afraid.
but when you put the ego Amy, it's the I am. That's kind of the should remind you. Oh, he's not just saying I am, but Amy. It's the I am. Is the same way. So anyway, there's just a little ding 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 ding.
So is he saying? Is he really saying it's me, or something else?
He's saying both.
It's I because the verb to be is understood.
So he is saying it's me, but he's also nudging, a bit of a nudge, wink, wink. I am God. And so that's when you get in the whole I am sayings as well, which took me ages, but it was so much fun. On your last page, there are 7 I am sayings in the book of John. And the I am is supposed to remind us of Yahweh. And so 7. Look, there's 7.
You haven't even been with this one.
No, but this is kind of like as an aside. This isn't a real. I am the bread of life. This is saying, don't be scared because
I'm God.
basically.
Isn't that more astounding?
Yeah, this is more of a sneaky one. That we got here. It's not one of the big ones, the big 7.
Oh, I would have thought I am God is 7.
Well, no, he didn't say I'm God. He's just saying,
No,
don't be scared because I'm his.
Or is it
I
partly
am,
to do with
that's it.
the audience? This is a very small, limited audience, whereas these were public.
Yeah, maybe. But these are the big 7.
Yeah.
This one's just a sneaky one, I reckon.
The magnificent 7.
The Magnificent 7. Here we go. I should have put that. The Magnificent 7, I am saying, you see the Gospel of John. Yeah, so we've got the I'm the bread of life, which we're getting to. Light of the world, I'm the gate to the sheep. Yeah, we'll come to all these, but I just thought I'd put them in a cool little
Yeah, good symbols.
symbols. Yeah, I had fun.
Or
Symbols.
icons.
Icons, yes. I had fun doing this. But it's not a table because Alan Kilgore doesn't like tables.
It's a chart.
It's a chart. Yes, yes.
Table without the lines.
Shh.
It's a list.
It's not a table. Okay,
This
it's
is
a table. Yeah. Okay, it is a table. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so there you go. You can have a look at those later and keep those for future reference. Yeah.
What font did you use for the numbers?
Oh, I don't know. Something in Canva.
Something that looked pretty.
Something that looked pretty in Canva.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, no, I used that font when we did the 7. I did the 7 old to new as well. It
Did I miss that?
was last week.
That's what you went there. You did miss that.
You did, but they're here. See?
Okay, your sheets are down.
Yeah.
Again, not a table.
I forgot to have a
It's
go.
table. It's a graphic.
It's a diagram.
It's a graphic.
Or graphic.
Yeah. Although, because Alan's not here this week or next week, you may as well do as many tables as I want. Well, I love them. All right. So that's the interesting thing. But what do you think then he's with the rest of it? What's he trying to highlight? Do you think in verses 16 to 20?
There's no admission here of who he is, like in one of the other gospels. By the confession.
Yeah, there's no confession by the disciples.
word.
That's interesting. Yes.
Wrong word, sorry.
But what is, I mean, so there's no confession, so that's not why it's here. What do you think John's trying to highlight?
But the disciples were useless with it.
The fact that they're useless, maybe.
That he's in control.
Yeah, I think highlighting more about Jesus than about the disciples, which is why we don't have any of the details.
And what's possible.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it's because in the other accounts we get a lot of focus on the disciples, whereas here he's just focusing on Jesus. So he's going, Jesus is the Son of God. Let's go.
Mm.
I'm not going to give you any of the details about how the disciples responded, really. I'm not going to give you all the conversations Jesus had with the disciples. I'm giving you this little incident so that you will understand Jesus is God.
Mm. It's interesting when you've got different stories, the same story in different gospels, and it brings out different things. This one doesn't talk about Peter walking on water, but what I didn't really notice before when I read it, when Jesus approached them, they were frightened, and he said, "Don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, as if before that
they were too scared.
They weren't letting him on the boat.
Well, I didn't recognize it initially.
Yeah. Dead of night.
Is it a ghost?
Yeah.
We don't talk about that enough, though. The thing is that they're written for different audiences. The context is different.
And the purpose.
And the purpose is different.
Absolutely.
And I've only begun to appreciate that since on PTC and
beautiful
stuff like that. But and we learn that. We learn about context and stuff. And
but when we come to the Bible, we often put that aside.
That's right. Exactly.
But this is why if you're going to remember anything from this course, John 20:31, and these were written so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, or the Christ is Jesus, the Son of God, and by believing have life in his name. And if we're doing Luke, it'd be Luke 1:4, Most excellent Theophilus. No, anyway. So whenever an author, especially in the Gospels, tells you why he's written, we've got to really understand and interpret
through that.
And understand, okay, this is why he's written, that's what we need to get out of this. Let's not go down paths that aren't working towards why he's written this for us.
Oh, I'm good at going down side paths.
We all are, which is why I appreciate it when people tell me why they've written. All right, and here's my little graphic of the I ams. If I print it in, it would be the Royal Mountain Anglican Blues, but I print in black and white.
I think the one is Comic Sans.
No.
I'm sorry.
No. Comic Sans is of the devil. This is Unito.
Unito.
Yes, it's a Canva one that we've adopted. Yes. No, I did a thing. Because in Chile there was such bad PowerPoint presentations in churches. Part of my third year course in pastoral ministry was I spent an hour. We were going through visual aids and and I ended up with do's and don'ts of PowerPoint.
And Comic Sans was off the door.
No, Comic Sans was in there when I was talking about fonts and all this kind of thing, and contrast and all and size and all this. And I just had one quick slide, and Comic Sans was of the devil.
Why?
Oh, so bad. It's bad, and it was like in
what way?
It's just it's ugly.
I think we've got a side issue.
And everyone used to use it. Yes, so that's a side issue. It was very popular in the early 90s when it first came out, and everyone was using it. And all the graphic designers are just like, this is the worst font that you could possibly use, because the graphic designers for some reason knew.
I've actually one of our friends was a commercial artist before computers.
Yep.
And he said
so they had to kern by hand.
All about fonts.
Yep.
So that what fonts to use when.
Yep.
And he said once people got computers and had all these choice of fonts, had the clue.
It got ugly.
Because there's too many. It got ugly.
Well, that was the other thing. You don't use 6 different fonts on one slide.
No.
Let's just come on.
Some of the CVs I read in the staff interview when I was at interviewing, and when, as you said at that time,
yes,
all the different fonts people use were one application.
Yes.
Thank you. I stick with Arial.
That's fine.
Yeah, get real fine.
Well-
Favorite time for weeding, etc.
Well, there are people who suggest that if it's like on paper that you really shouldn't use sans serif font because your brain needs the little curly bits to help it. Really,
I like
Um,
straight.
put on a screen. That's right. Yeah, me too. But this is just people get paid to do these studies. Anyway, so moving on, we have where am I? Yes, the next part. Verses 25 to 59, which is basically the bread of God come down from heaven. And so if we wanted to summarize chapters 5 and 6 in this nice little table without lines, it's about Jesus' self-revelation. So chapter 5, we've got revealing himself as the Son of God. He talks about acting in perfect unity with the Father, came to give life in the place of death. And the focus really they're saying in chapter 5 is on his person. This is who he is. Yeah. This is what he does. This is who he is. But more so, this is who he is. Chapter 6 focuses more on his work, but it looks at his work from the fact that he is divine, looks at his life-giving work, explaining them as I am the bread of life, but the focus is on more on his work. That's what the notes are suggesting, that chapter 5 in talking about the bread of God come down from heaven, it's more focusing on the person of Jesus, and chapter 6 more on his work. I'm not convinced that it fits that nicely, but it could be in the exam.
That's what we need to know for the exam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree with it.
Yeah. No, it's true, but I'm not sure it's always that black and white and fits that nicely. But anyway, it's a nice little generalized summary, if you see what I'm saying. Yeah. All right. So my quote there from page 59, talking about verses 25 to 59. If Jesus is who he says he is, then the readers of John's Gospel can no longer remain one of the crowd, undecided about Jesus. They must either be aligned with the Jews in their rejection of Jesus, or else be among those who believe and receive the life that Jesus came to bring. That's kind of, if you want to go in the whole reader response kind of way of reading a text, this is, as readers, how the response we're forced into or asked to make. You can't just be one. I'll identify as one of the crowd who is not going to make a decision. It's pushing. This is who he is. This is how serious it is. This is his work. This is what he's come to do. There are only two options, death or life. There are only two options. You either believe or you don't. Yeah. So that's kind of where this section is eventually gets us to. Yeah. Got another table. Yeah. So we have tables because I love them. And this is just a table of summarising the contents of this section, verses 16 to, it's more than that. That's a bad heading. Basically, verses 24 to 34. Actually, sorry, 24 to 35. I've got the head, ignore this heading. Jesus goes to his disciples, 16 to 21. This is more, that was wrong. Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about me. We're looking at verses 24 to 35. So we have two columns almost, the crowd and Jesus. So the crowd are focused on earthly food, and Jesus says, well, work for eternal food. So that's verses 24 to 26. The crowd are focused on earthly food. Verse 27, Jesus goes, well, work for eternal food. And so they go in verse 28, well, what must we do? So verse 29, well, the work of God is believe in the one God has sent. You see how that also takes the focus off what I can achieve, but what God has done? Sorry, this is just, moving us on towards, verses 30 to 31, they go, okay then, if that's the work, Moses gave us a sign, what sign are you going to give us? Verses 32 to 33, Jesus says, okay, Moses. All right, now we're talking Moses. The true bread is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. it's not that stupid manna you're talking about. I'm the true bread. And so then in verse 34, they go, okay, then give us this bread that you're talking about. And this is where we get to the high point, verse 35. I am. Wait, what? The bread of life. Just the way it's constructed, especially if you look at it in, I really like analysing it in table or in different ways that it's. Again, some people prefer just to have the narrative read out until the narrative as it flows. I'm a bit more analytical. I like going, oh, look how it flows. Because maybe I'm just a bit slower. I don't usually pick up the flow just by listening to it. I need to organise it in my brain. So anyway.
I just wondering, the question in 28, what must we do?
And
then the response is, well, believe in the one who God sent. Can you see the crowd saying, yes, but what can we do?
Yeah. And again, it's earthly and heavenly. He's saying, well, what must we do on earth? He's saying, we'll believe in the one who's sent from heaven.
Yeah, that's not
Well, what
doing
sign will
anything.
you give us here on earth? And he says, well, I'm giving you the sign from heaven.
Yeah, but we want to do something.
I know.
We want to keep the law.
I know. And that's why people struggle with the gospel of grace.
Still,
Now, this is after the feeding of the 5,000.
Yes.
So they're at least familiar with what happened then.
Yes.
And they can compare that to what Moses did for manna from heaven.
Which is why this whole conversation is taking place. Because they've seen it, they've gone, oh, new Moses, oh.
Are they the same crowd though? Because they've walked on. We've had the walking on the water in between, so it's in a different place.
Yeah.
So have they seen this?
Some
Some would have heard you would.
Well, I think in the other gospels too, they go around the
travel
other side
around
to Lake.
to Lake.
Yeah.
So some know,
Yeah. And even those who
Not
weren't
all
there
word of
would have
mouth.
heard.
would have gone around.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of
Yeah.
them would be expecting a different type of person
Yes.
being assigned, coming down from God.
Absolutely.
Not the passive person like Jesus appears to be.
Absolutely.
Someone with a sword in their hand to say,
Oh, I love the way that always asking for a sign, and he's just giving them a sign.
Well, there you go. That was my next
The sort of sign
question.
they want.
That was my next question. What's the irony here in verses 30 to 33? Well, what sign will you give us like Moses? Haven't you just seen the bread from heaven? I am that bread, you know. Haven't you just seen this miraculous bread? You know, the irony there is just like, it blows my mind. It's like, well, here's a sign. Well, what sign are you going to give us?
I just gave it you.
And in exactly the form they wanted to.
Exactly.
Not anything hard
Yeah.
to read.
you
Crazy.
have to assume there's a few people there who are getting it, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
sense to them, but unless it's a majority, you don't seem to.
But even the disciples seem to be struggling too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the feeding of the lesser number was before, the bigger number was before or after this.
But they have a short memory too, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
But I can't bag them on saying.
Yeah.
And a limited attention span, and they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah. I
easily
look at them,
distracted,
yeah.
just like all children these days.
Not just children.
And the adults
Yeah, yeah.
they turn into.
So as we move through from verses 36 to 47, Jesus then challenges their persistent unbelief. And what is his challenge here in verses 36 to 47?
They've seen it.
Yeah. You've seen it with your own eyes. How can you not believe?
Because all those the Father gives me will come to me. So people who do understand will naturally follow Jesus.
And again, that could be a challenge too. He could be going, are you really belong to the Father? Because if you did, you'd come to me.
Whoever comes to me, I will never drive away.
Yep. So there's that part of the challenge as well.
What they just didn't get it. I mean, even if they did understand the extended metaphor, the idea of the bread and so forth, they couldn't get it because is this not Jesus, son of Joseph, his father and mother? We know.
Yes.
There's no mystery there.
Yes.
And they need a mystery. And this is just the bloke down the road.
But I would suggest even today, people don't get it.
Yeah.
They read these words and they think, well, they don't probably understand themselves what it actually means to believe.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I think here we go. Here's another Hebrews link. Because it's linked with the Psalms as well. It's almost like they need a Melchizedek figure.
Yeah.
Oh, Hebrews says Jesus is a priest in the line of Melchizedek. Yeah. So,
It suggests to me, and that he looked ordinary.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we sort of get that now, but at the time there he was, and we know his parents, we know where he played, we know where he grew up.
If you're looking for a king messiah,
Well, that's
a
right. Yes.
military messiah, you're looking for a physically well-built,
Yeah, that's right.
imposing person,
You're looking for a guy,
not a humble carpenter.
But those, if they know the scriptures, they can go back to the choice of kings and where David came from and stuff like that.
The root of Jesse, the promise for the root of Jesse. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what they were grumbling about. They go, hey, we know this guy. He's Joseph and Mary's son. Come on, we know him. How does Jesus respond to that towards the end of this section? Verse 43 onwards.
Stop grumbling.
Stop grumbling.
Yeah, stop grumbling. Why?
But he also said it's written in the prophets.
Yeah.
So he appeals to their knowledge,
Appeals to what they hold dear.
what the whole dear is.
Absolutely.
It depends on the father, doesn't it?
Again,
When people
it-
come.
again,
If you
the
can't
gospel-
hear me, the father hasn't drawn you to me.
and again, it's the gospel going, it's not by your hand that you can be saved. It's another, it's just makes so much sense when you see the general gist of it. It's not by your hand that you're saved.
Picking up what Tony was saying, that people don't get it today. I think back to some of the crazy things that people have chosen to believe in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you remember the 90s. The
I do.
1970s and pyramid power and chariots of the gods. And
I read that.
Oh, I have a very vague.
people believe, a lot of people chose to believe something like that.
I read that book. I was
Yeah.
quite entranced with it. I was probably 17 or 18 or something. at the
Yeah,
time.
I was about the same. Yeah. Read that book.
Well, I taught a guy whose family were the ones who sold everything because the world was ending in the year 2000. 31st of December 1999. And then it
What-
didn't. And
what
so
What did they do with all the money?
I don't remember, but they were broke.
Yeah.
They'd given it all away.
Oh.
Everything was gone. And so this kid, basically they had to live in public housing and they had to be given everything all over again. So he was coming in secondhand clothes and all this kind of thing because the family believed.
Yeah, there's just.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you think, oh, that's silly, and then you see people.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there's no doubt that people want to believe something,
yes,
but
And people act on what they believe.
yes,
it's something which is, in many ways, Jesus is both, his message is both profound and mundane,
yes, yes.
and it's not maybe. I mean, the ultimate message is amazing, but when the people see him, this is the bloke down the road. He can't
There's nothing special.
be a prophet. You can't be.
Yeah.
Anything special.
It's kind of like there is nothing special,
Mm.
but there is.
We were at temple
Anyway.
school together.
Sorry,
There must have been those that said we were at the temple school together. We were in the same
Maybe.
group.
yeah, maybe.
We played with him.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
played as kids.
Then we get into the bread that I will give is my flesh, talking about the eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood. I'll just cut to the chase, my quote from page 64. In the context of the whole dialogue, eating his flesh and drinking his blood continues the theme of coming to Jesus and believing in him in order to have eternal life, which is expressed in John 6:35. The whole eating his flesh and drinking his blood caused a bit of a furor because again, people thinking here and now, thinking literal, thinking concrete, thinking earthly, not thinking.
Is it transubstantiation?
Yes, yes, it is.
So this is where they get that doctrine from. This
Quite
verse.
possibly, quite possibly. Anyway, so we get towards the end and we get verses 68 to 69. And in what way would verses 68 to 69 summarize the revelation of Jesus, I think, particularly self-revelation? How would that summarize the revelation of Jesus' identity?
You've come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God.
Okay, so he's the Holy One of God.
So he's the only one through whom they can have eternal life.
And how do they believe? Through his words. For you alone have the words of eternal life.
Yeah.
So they've got that it's by trusting in what he says.
That would make a great song.
We are-
Yeah, not everyone.
Yeah, but that's his disciples who've said to him. So when that's the 12. So they've mentioned disciples. They've mentioned disciples who have kind of gone others too hard and left, and he's turns to the 12 and says, "Are you like the rest of my disciples here? Are you going to go too?" And he's like, "Well, where else are we to go? Because you alone have the words of eternal life. We know who you are," which is a great high point.
And yet, one of them.
Even knowing, yeah. All right. We don't have time, but this was one of my little things we could have thought about. Why do you think people's interactions with Jesus can lead to completely different responses? But anyway,
Just like we just read.
like what we just read.
Let them believe it, one doesn't.
Yeah. So my questions kind of are meant to go from what we've read to reflect. Anyway, that's this week.
Thank you.
Two chapters. Good fun.
I always like to think that Andrew is on the right path.
Your old hopes high for Andrew. You think
Yeah,
he's
well,
your favourite?
He actually brings the boy with very little. He hasn't really got a lot of hope, but he's making connections.
Okay.
Like, here's someone with something.
Yep.
I believe you can do something with it.
Maybe,
I don't know what. I don't know how.
Nice.
I don't know. He's always bringing someone to Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
Simon to Jesus.
Yeah.
Boy to Jesus.
Maybe he thought.
So I have a soft spot.
You have a soft spot. He's your.
Yes, I have a child called Andrew. Consequently, because I thought he was such a nice bloke.
He's your hero.
Yeah.
No,
The hero
I wonder
disciple.
if he,
What are we looking at?
he was even thinking Jesus needs some sustenance.
I don't know.
This boy-
But I think she's right. I think Andrew does bring a lot
He
of people
does
to
bring
Jesus.
a lot
He's
of
the one who's named who's bringing people. I mean, others will bring,
Twice.
but I think he's named.
Yeah.
That's quite cool.
Mm. I
It's
like the name
remembered
Andrew.
for that.
I personally relate to Peter because
Oh,
I
yeah.
open my mouth before
Yeah.
thinking.
Isn't he wonderful?
Yeah.
You think
But
Peter's saved.
and my opinion is Peter often just says what everyone else is thinking and too
Yeah.
scared to say.
True.
Again, I relate to
Absolutely.
him. I relate to Peter. I have no filter sometimes and no fear. So
Yeah.
and I'm an
We
idiot
need
too.
people like that.
So I'm happy to be the
And to
idiot.
have it recorded so that we know that ordinary human people like that with all their fallacies and faults are Jesus friends.
Absolutely. And it gives validity to the validity of the document too.
And they're all through the Bible.
Yeah.
God uses flawed humans
Yeah.
over and over again.
It's the only reason I preach, because
Well, they're the
God
only
can
kind
speak
of
to a
humans
donkey.
there are these days.
And even today, does.
Well, every day,
Yeah.
every time.
I trust that God can speak
Paul,
even through a donkey, so that's why I'm still happy to preach. Yeah.
That's why that story's in the Bible. isn't it?
Exactly, for preachers.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm being
I
silly.
agree, but
I'm being silly.
Are we
Sorry.
still recording?
Yes,
Oh.
I'm being silly. I'm happy to be recorded and being silly.
Hmm.
Would someone like to pray for us before I get way too silly?
I'll pray.
Thank you.
Dear loving Father, thank you once again for our time of fellowship. Thank you for Gary and his leadership and his encouragement and his guidance through John. And thank you so much for the blessed word that John gives to us. In your name, amen.
Amen. As always, it's been a small slice of heaven.